Patient. So I'll tell you what. I'll just. I was going to use this as sort of a blackboard, but there's no fancy pictures on it or no running goats or anything like that. So I'll just explain it to you. Let me turn down the lights. Well, we don't need to. You can leave the lights up. All right. I want to talk to you about writing an essay, answers on a test, an approach that works. And I taught English for a long time. I'm also a writer. I just published a book called And So It Goes. It's a life of Kurt Vonnegut, and came out a couple of weeks ago. Also, I happen to be the associate director of the Great Lives program here at University of Mary Washington. And I want to encourage you, I'm trying to get more young people to come to that because, we have famous biographers and famous authors who make presentations about all kinds of different people. And, aside from your studies, nevertheless, it doesn't have to necessarily dovetail with what you're studying. It's just very interesting to hear about the struggles and travails of various kinds of people in various walks of life. For this season coming up, for example, we have Madam C.J. Walker, who was the first female black millionaire in the United States, and she recognized a need, which is that there were no cosmetics for black women. So she started a cosmetics company that addressed, skin tone and hairstyle and things like that. And by the 1920s was one of the wealthiest women in the United States. We're also having a presentation on a woman who's not many people know her name, but her name is Juliet Lowe, and she's the founder of the Girl Scouts. And she was looking for something to do with her life. She had an unhappy marriage, it didn't work out. She went to England and she met some friends, and she ran into a guy who had founded the Boy Scouts. And realized, well, it doesn't have to be gender specific. It's all about organization and being involved and everything. So she came back to Savannah, called up some of her friends, and said, I have something great for girls in this country. And 10 years later, there were 100,000 Girl Scouts all across the United States. This is the 100th anniversary of the Girl Scouts. And it's a fascinating story about a woman who just had an idea about young people and, what could we do to empower girls. And she's really an early feminist around the time of World War I. So we have her, we have Columbus, we have Anne Frank, the first graphic biography ever done of Anne Frank. It's like a graphic novel. And we have Lauren Redness, who's going to be presenting a graphic biography, first one ever done, of Pierre and Marie Curie. And the book was so well done that it was nominated for a National Book Award. Just came out about 6 months ago. Absolutely gorgeous book. It's called Radioactivity. And it's about the love between Pierre and Marie, and also how they gave their lives for science. Because, as you know, Marie died of radiation eventually. So we have some really fascinating speakers, and I would encourage you, they're almost every Tuesday, Thursday night in Dodd Hall, starting at 7 p.m. And I would encourage you to attend because I think you'll see some really, really interesting people. And if you're a sports fan, we're going to have a guy talk about Jackie Robinson, first guy to break the color barrier in Major League Baseball. Well, let me tell you about writing an essay, answers on tests, an approach that works. Step one, something to do even before the test, all right? You may have thought that I was going to talk about what to do when you enter the room and you sit down and there it is in front of you. How do I attack it? You can start on the essay test long before you ever enter the room, and this is what to do. Ask your instructor, how many questions will be essay questions? Sometimes, you might find out there's going to be a test, is it 3 major essay questions and 25 multiple choice, or is it only essay questions, or is it 1 essay question? Scope out the terrain. Find out in advance how many questions will be essay questions, what percentage of the test will be essay question, and what proportion is it in terms of my grade? Could be 3 essay questions or 25 points each for 75 points, and there's only 25 multiple choice. So even if you ace the multiple choice part, and get like 12, 11, 8 on the essay part, you're going to fail a test. How many essay questions? What percentage of the test do they constitute? What percentage of the grade? And it's not cheating to ask, what will the essay questions cover? It's no secret, what your instructors are telling you. They're not trying to communicate some arcane knowledge, that they know and you have to figure out, you can ask them if you're in American history, are they going to deal only with the Western movement? Are they going to deal with colonialism and economics? Are they going to deal with the Constitution and the Federation of American States? That sort of thing. Ask your instructors in advance, what will the questions cover? So now, even before you've started the test, even before you've started studying, you've looked at how many essay questions are going to be, what percentage of the test is going to be essay question, and what will the essay questions cover. You can self-test long before you walk into a room. When I was an undergraduate, there were no classes on study skills or test preparation or anything like that. And I just used to walk in cold. I would read a lot and go over my notes and things, and then walk in and just hope that the essay question would be something that I would know. Well, look, here's the second step to getting ready for an essay test. Review your notes and tests. That should be a given. That's an obvious. But make up your own essay questions. If you were the instructor and you were teaching this course, what essay question would you ask? What would be one of those comprehensive questions that would address a lot of the things that you've been talking about? And instructors are not out to trick you. They're not out to ask an essay question that is so peculiar or so odd, that nobody could possibly get it. They really want to ask essay-type questions that are encompassing, that somehow deal with exactly what he or she's been standing up here talking about for the last quarter or last semester. So if you were in charge of the class, what would you ask? Also, don't make them softball questions. It's easy to come up with a couple of shoot from the hip type questions, but just for fun, write down. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but it really is very helpful. Is to write down 2 or 3 real corkers for essay questions, and can you answer them? If you were put into a room and you were just that question was just put to you, could you in fact give a comprehensive answer to that essay question? If you find yourself, posing essay questions that are too powerful for even you to answer, or there's big gaps in your knowledge, apparently you're addressing some stuff you don't know. If you can't answer your own question, then there's things that you need to study. Now, how do you know whether you know the answers? How do you know whether you really are learning in this class, that you can actually talk about something in an essay response? Ever heard of Bloom's taxonomy of learning? Anybody familiar with it? Did you get it in any of your education classes? Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Bloom's taxonomy of learning is like a upside-down pyramid. It goes from very general to very specific, and it recognizes stages of really understanding. All right? And it's like a way of peeling back an onion and looking deeper and deeper at the center of it. And that has to do with learning as well. Let me explain to you. It's really not difficult to understand. Here are the 6 stages that Bloom, in his taxonomy of learning, his structure of learning, has identified. The most fundamental one is just knowledge. You know stuff. Okay? You know stuff about the subject. Yeah. Civil War, 1861, 1865, North, South, Blue, Gray, Gettysburg. All right, that's the fundamental. That's like being on Jeopardy. You know a lot of stuff. That's knowledge. The second level is comprehension. Okay? Nobody could fool you about which side General Lee was on. Nobody could fool you about who was president during the Civil War. Nobody could say, wasn't the Civil War in the 20th century? And you'd say, I don't know. You know it. You comprehend it, you have a sense of how it occurs or where it is. Then the third step in understanding is being able to apply it. So you know about this subject, you know a lot about it, you have a sense of where it is in human knowledge or endeavor, and if given the opportunity to explain it yourself or use it as a theorem or as something on a job, yeah, you could do it. You know enough about it that you could do it. For example, take an engine, combustion engine. You know where the engine is in the car. you know what the engine does. You comprehend its purpose in an automobile is to provide power. You can probably even locate, you can open the hood and you can identify that's the block and that's the air cleaner, and over here's the battery. Okay, so you're familiar with an engine. What if you had no engine to look at? Here's where the application part comes in. What if somebody from another planet said, what is engine? And you took out a piece of paper. Could you draw an engine, its position in the car, how the power goes to the wheels, and what's going on inside the engine? That there's no magic or fairy dust in there. There's pistons going up and down that turn a crankshaft, that go to the transmission, and make the power go to the wheels on the outside. You can apply your understanding of what an engine is beyond just, that's an engine, and all those things out there, they have engines. That's an application. Analysis is the fourth level of understanding. This is where you can begin to take it apart, where you know so much about it that you can recognize problems or difficulties, irregularities or inconsistencies. For example, those of you who are into engines, let's say that you change gases, you change gasoline. You decide you're paying too much at the pump, and so you fill up your car with another kind of gasoline, and because you want to save a few pennies, you put in 87 octane instead of 89. And following day, you hear this tickety, 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 tickety noise inside the engine going on. And when you accelerate, you hear this rattling noise. And you open up the hood and everything's bolted down. And it continues to rattle. What is that? What is the cause and effect between lower octane and that noise? Do you know what it is?
These are the pistons. They're firing wrong because you premium gasoline.
Right.
Closer to the
premium gasoline is what your engine needs.
Yeah.
Right. And because of the lower octane, you're getting what's called rattle. That valve rattle. Okay. The rods are making a lot of noise as they go up and down. Only somebody who understands how an engine works and what the relationship of the gas to the engine is could analyze what the problem is. And that's essentially what a mechanic does. They analyze. And that's what you do when given a case history or a case study in one of your classes. And there's a problem in it. There's an inconsistency in it. And you have to know, comprehend, be able to apply it, and then to analyze it. The fifth stage of learning. This is where you know your stuff so well that you can be presented with something that's relatively unfamiliar. But because you know this subject so well, you're able to draw from different areas to figure out what's wrong or what's right or how to explain it. It's called synthesis. It's called synthesis. It's when you're bringing things together. So there's knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis. Synthesis is bringing things together. And if you're able to come up with something, it's what artists do if you think about it. Have you ever seen, for example, a sculpture made out of all kinds of disparate parts? You'll see a piece of sculpture in a museum, and it's got an iron gear, and it's got a faucet, and it's got two, for legs, it's got two tire irons. And it's standing on ceramic. And you stand back and you realize it actually seems to have some power about it. It looks like an animal in motion, and yet no animal looks like that. That's synthesis. That's being able to see relationships between things and thinking, tire irons do look like the legs of a flamingo. And a gear does look like feathers sticking out if the bird were made of iron. And ceramic, when it's all broken up, does look like a beach. So put these together and we have the suggestion or a metaphor for a bird. That's synthesis. You're often asked to do that in history. You're often asked to look at a situation and draw from different aspects, different things that you know about that historical circumstance and think, I think I know why that is. Or I think I see a similarity between things here. Seeing similarities is an example. Being able to associate is an example of real understanding, because These things aren't obviously related, and yet you see a connection. You see a connection. I'll give you an example from my own work. When I was doing this biography of Kurt Vonnegut, I let the computer do some associating for me. All right? Kurt Vonnegut was an American author who lived from 1922 to 2006. Wrote 14 novels like Slaughterhouse-Five, Cat's Cradle, Sirens of Titan, a number of other books. Slaughterhouse-Five is probably his best known. How many of you are familiar with Slaughterhouse-Five with Billy Pilgrim ricocheting around? All right, so I was friends with Vonnegut right before he died. We got to talking, and I went to his house a number of times. And I asked him if he had any letters. And he said no, he had lost all of his letters in a fire. And what had happened was, on Super Bowl Sunday 2000, he was alone in his study, and he was watching the Super Bowl, and Kurt was a chain smoker. He lit one Pall Mall off the other, all right? So the game hadn't quite started, and he thought, I'll go get myself a sandwich. So he goes downstairs, and he's rummaging around in the refrigerator. Somebody's banging on the front door, Mr. Vonnegut, Mr. Vonnegut! And he opens up the front door, and the guy steps back and says, there's smoke pouring out of your window. What had happened was, being the kind of guy who always had a cigarette in hand, he balanced it on the edge of his desk when he went down to get a cheese sandwich. It fell into the wastebasket full of crumpled up paper, and there was this inferno going up through the roof of his study. And he staggered in there, tried to rescue things, couldn't. The fireman came, sprayed junk all over the place. He lost all of his letters. All right, Kurt died shortly after that. And I thought, no letters, great. Guy's 84 years old, no letters to look at. How am I going to do a biography? As it turned out, people had kept his letters over the years. He loved writing letters, long, chatty, 2-page letters. I ended up with 1,500 of them, from 1945 all the way up to 2007, 3 weeks before he died. And my wife put them in chronological order, and it was almost too much to comprehend. I mean, I'm looking at 8 3-inch blue notebooks on my shelf with 1,500 letters. And I read them, and I read them, and it was almost too much for me to take in. And I thought, I'm going to let the computer help me make associations. I'm going to let the computer do some synthesis for me. So what I did was I scanned all 1,500 letters. Took 3 weeks. I just ran them through. Now all the letters, fortunately he typed, he didn't write in hand. All the letters are in the computer. I go to the search function on the computer, and I start putting in terms. Children, he mentions them 137 times. Money, he mentions them 500 times. Money seems to be rather important. Death, he starts mentioning it more and more the older he gets. And these start suggesting associations to me, that children are, yes, something that he writes about, but money is a topic that really absorbs him. And that's the reason, because he was broke the first 30 years of his writing life. Vonnegut couldn't make it as a writer. He was always broken, always struggling. And as he got older, aging and death and loss of ability starts coming out more and more in the letters. That's synthesis, That's taking 1,500 letters written across 50 years and finding patterns and seeing relationships. So that's an example of synthesis. The last one we've got knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis. The last one is, you know so much, you can venture an opinion on it. Evaluation. Why do you think they have particular people on political talk shows? These people are such political wonks, They're such policy experts that they can venture an informed opinion. They know the Republican Party. They're able to draw on different things that people have said. And so when McLaughlin turns to them and says, so where do you think we're headed in 2012? This guy, or this woman, can make an evaluation because they are so deep into it, so knowledgeable they can evaluate. So often your instructors will ask you to evaluate. They will pose a question and ask you to evaluate, and you can't give an informed, long-form answer to anything unless you know so much and have thought about it and have seen relationships that now you can offer a really informed answer. You don't just have to rely on dates, names, generals, battles. You don't have to just rely on chemical bonds. You don't have to just rely on theorems. You can evaluate things because you know so much. Okay. So you come to the test. You feel like you've known it. Feel like you know it. You have opinions about a lot of different things in connection with this topic. You've posed some essay questions to yourself. You're good. You feel you're good to go. What to do when you arrive to the test. Well, first thing you should do is, hang on one second, I'm almost there. Okay. How many essay questions are on the test? I mean, maybe your instructor didn't tell you, or maybe you didn't think to ask. So first, scope out the test as a whole. Don't just plunge in. Question 1, stage 1, answer this, and you start to write like mad. Look through the entire thing and figure out what percentage of this test is devoted to essay type questions. How much time have I got for the whole test? An hour? And there's 3 essay questions, and then there's 50, short answer. So I can't spend more than 10 minutes on each question. 10 minutes on each essay question, or 12 minutes, or 15. Do the math. Jot down how much time do you have? How many essay questions are on this thing? And budget your time. How much time do I have to answer? Terrible situation to be in. If you do a bang-up job on the first essay question, 1 out of 3, and you've just spent 25 minutes and you nailed it, and you glance up and there's 17 minutes left, and you've got 2 more essay questions to go. You should budget your time and stick to it. You glance up and you see 3 more minutes, 2 more minutes. I gotta wind this up. Go for broke in terms of doing the absolute best you can on each of them given the time. But no sterling, golden, diamond-studded answer to just 1 question out of 3 is going to bail you out. So budget your time. Do the math. Which ones are the most challenging? Which essay questions are the hardest? And this is something you may want to avoid. You may think, well, those aren't the ones I'm going to do right away. I'm going to do the easy ones first. I would recommend that you do the hard essay question first, not the easy essay question first. Why would you bother to waste your time on something that you know you're not going to do a very good job on? Because you might scarf up some credit, all right? Whereas if you shoot all of your time and all of your energy on something that you really know the best, and you get to the hard one, you're out of gas mentally. You figure, it's only 7 more minutes, I can't do anything anyway. Well, why work from a deficit point of view like that? Why not tackle the real toughies first? Do the best possible job you can on them. Now, okay, forget it. I did the best I could. Now, watch this. And you go to the essay question that you know cold and really rack up some credit on that one. So go for the hard one first. It's sort of like a time management principle that I learned a long time ago when I was in college. I picked up this little book called The ABCs of Time Management. And there was one question in there that it's good to ask yourself now and then, because you'll find that you don't want to do what the answer is, but it's really what you should do. The one key question about time management is to ask yourself periodically, what should I be doing right now? And a lot of times what pops into your mind is, oh God, I don't want to do that. You know why? Because it's what you really need to do. It's the thing that you don't want to do. It's the thing that you're procrastinating about. But if you ask yourself, what should I be doing right now? It probably may not be what you're doing at that moment. Same sort of thing with the essay question. Which one of these is the most god-awful? Okay, I'll do it. And then you go to the easy ones instead. Okay? Now, there's key words. You tell me, what kinds of key words are there in essay questions that sort of steer what sort of answer you get? I'll give you a clue. They're verbs. What sort of verbs do you see in essay questions that give you an idea which way to go on this? Analyze. Compare. Describe. Show the process. Right. Analyze, that sort of stuff. The whole essay question is tipping on that fulcrum. All the other stuff, the subject, the predicate, everything, is rocking back and forth on explain or discuss, define, describe, anything like that. Define tends to be a definition with examples. Describe tends to be a process. Explain tends to be some issue or problem that you need to unpack and show your understanding of. Discuss tends to be your attempt at going over a range of topics. Look at the verb. Look at the verb that's in the essay question, because you'll find that it's really something that is driving the whole thing. Now you're ready to write. And you may think, geez, I already spent 4 minutes, looking at the verb and looking at the questions and everything. Now you're ready to write. Before you start to write, just do this. Jot down the key point you want to make. What's the takeaway in your answer? In other words, before you write 250, 350, 750 words, what is the one key thing that you absolutely got to get across? Terrible, awful situation. You write and you write and you write, and you glance back at it and you realize, I still haven't made my point. I mean, I'm like on page 2, the heel of my hand hurts, and I have yet to make my point. All this has been show-offness. All this has been prelude. All this has been getting up to the point I want to make, and yet I haven't made the point yet. What's the key point you want to make? Just like the verb is that fulcrum that the whole thing's riding on, this is your key point. Jot down under it at least 3 things that you want to use to prove that point or illustrate that point. What you're making is a tiny little outline. Roman numeral 1, my key point. A, B, C, how I'm going to show it. Roman numeral 2, my conclusion. You may think it's wasting time. You may think that it's unnecessary, spinning your wheels. It isn't. It's going to direct your writing. Look, you're already a little bit tense. You're already a little bit nervous. Time is short. By just jotting down this eensy-weensy outline, it's your crib sheet. It's almost as if, and I never recommend that you cheat, but it's almost as if you had on the back of your hand the stuff that you have to remember for this test. Get it down, get it out on the paper. There it is. That's going to be my blueprint for this big, fat, ugly answer over here. It's going to be my blueprint that it's going to guide me through the whole answer. Okay? Now, while you're writing, sometimes, you're going along now, you're sticking to your point, you're looking at your blueprint. Stop just for a few seconds and go back and read to make sure that you're on point, that you're staying the course. Because it is possible to write and write and write and write and write and write, and go back and look at it, and you've lost your way. Somewhere, 10 sentences ago, you got off on a tangent. You started to digress. You got real interested in this scientist's life, and in the process of explaining the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, you started talking about Heisenberg's lousy life. Well, that's not what the essay question was asking about, okay? It's nice that you like him. It's nice that you like Einstein. But the essay question is not about their blighted childhoods or how Einstein got a D in math. The question is about relativity. The question is about how do we tell the direction of time? What's chaos got to do with diffusion of gases? How can you tell just from a film what time it is by the direction of the gases? Things like that. So make sure that you're not digressing. Go back and read it briefly. Are you on the point? Are you headed toward the conclusion? What instructors are going to look for? When you turn it in, when they go back and they grade, this is what they're going to look for. And I know this because I used to be a teaching assistant at the University of Illinois, and I worked for a number of different instructors. And they would actually give us, and I think this practice is probably still true today, they would actually give us a point sheet In other words, for this essay question, give the person a point if they say this. Give the person a point if they are able to demonstrate this. Give the person 3 points if they're able to arrive. And we would actually use this rubric. We would use this rubric to see if this essay question was not writing on style or BS, that this essay question, this answer was not just writing on big vocabulary, phlegmatic instead of sluggish, dilatory instead of slow, but instead, really, the person really knew their stuff. And so what's going to be on that point sheet? What's going to be that rubric? How is your instructor evaluating it? Well, at the very fundamental level, they're going to look for the first element of Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge. They're going to look for knowledge. Do you know about this subject? Is it apparent that you've done the reading? And that's just the bottom line. That's the D- level, okay? You've been coming to class. You are familiar with these concepts. You're in the right course, all right? They're going to look for things like names and specifics, references, precedents. Okay, fine. You've been coming to class. You've been taking notes. It's pretty clear that you understand what this finance course is about fundamentally. What they're going to look for then is, second, is there some structure to this? Does this essay question hold together in this simple pattern? Does it have a beginning, a middle, and an end? And what that's demonstrating is the second part of Bloom's taxonomy. The fundamental part is, knowledge. The beginning and the middle and the end structure shows that you're able to apply it. You know that you can take your knowledge and you can make it into some organized pattern. You can show what you know. You can demonstrate some comprehension. All right? The next thing they're going to look for after structure is that you can start, this is what they give the high grades for, that you can begin to pull together from different directions, different examples, that you can reach back earlier in the quarter and find an example that illustrates that, or you can find in science what they call a counterfactual, something that shows the opposite. We know this to be true because if we didn't do this, something else would happen. So you understand the deep stuff. You get cause and effect. You get precedent. You get the things that show why something is so. That's synthesis. That's evaluation. And that's where your conclusion is going to start to arrive. These higher end things, synthesis and evaluation, being able to pull things together and express an opinion or maintain a thesis or prove your premise, those are what the high grades are given for. Not just knowledge, not just a book report, all right? In the 5th and 6th grade, you're taught how to write a book report on a novel. And then when you get into high school and you start looking at novels, your teachers start talking about themes. By the time you're in college, they want to know, how does this novel fit within the author's genre? How does this novel demonstrate key themes in his or her own life? How does he create character? That's a deeper understanding than just, this is about Flicka, and Flicka had a foal, and then the foal fell into a canyon, and the end, I loved it, or which is a book report, okay? They want the deeper, they want that rebar inside the concrete, they want to know the structure to things, they want you to take off the outside of this building and show us how it's constructed, how it holds together, that sort of thing. So that's what the high grades are given for. Those are the things that demonstrate mastery. When you can show that you are able to really express an informed opinion. Just a final tip, never throw away anything. Become a hoarder. Those of you who are walking out of class and going, oh, see, wait a minute. I taught for a long time, and I know that I go back to earlier tests and pull from those for content. Why should I make up an entirely new exam when I really put some sweat equity into that exam 8 weeks ago? And just to see if it's sticking with you, just to see if you are really coming along, I'm going to pull a couple old questions out and ask you again. I'll rephrase it, I'll ask you in a different manner. I'll change it from a short answer to a long answer. But to make sure that there's some consistency here, that you are indeed learning, I'll go back, take an old test, and maybe carve out 15-20% of it and put it on the new test. Look familiar? It should. Because that's what we've been doing in this class. There's a learning curve. All right? Any questions? Any questions about anything I've mentioned so far? Any questions at all? Yes?
So there's just 4 steps.
Yeah. Let me review them. Okay?
I just want to make sure.
Yeah. 4 steps.
One was all 1 step. So
Okay. Sorry.
yeah.
Okay. First step is what can you do before the test, right? And then when you arrive, and then the third step is, let's see, what do you have for the third step? Yeah, to recognize that, that there are stages in what you want to say, just beyond fundamental knowledge. And the fourth one is to, just a second. Go back and see that you, as you read, go back and reread it and make sure that you stay on the point. In other words, do some reality checking as you go to make sure that you're not straying or rambling, that this is indeed what you want to say. Okay? Other questions? Yes?
A lot of exams are not cumulative, so of course you can't, other than for looking for style and how questions are asked, you can't really use your prior tests and things to prepare for the next one.
Why not? I
It's
don't
not the
understand.
same information. I mean,
Oh.
if you have information A through D on your first midterm, and then
I
you
see.
have E through G.
I see.
I mean.
Well, when you get to finals, aren't they cumulative?
Not always.
Oh, okay. All right.
Not always. But you of course you use the earlier test to check how the professor asks questions. But I'm not really sure how to ask what I'm asking. How do you prioritize? I always have a hard time figuring out how to prioritize what I've been given in class, and especially if I have a class where I have specific sets of notes, but then I have a huge amount of reading that I've been expected to do on my own.
Mm-hmm.
How do I prioritize to prepare for the test?
Your notes are supposed to be the key things that you're taking away from the class. All right. It's not that body of literature. It's not those 6 Thomas Hardy novels. It's not the 8 chapters in science. It's your notes, and that's why note taking is critical. Because if you don't take notes as you go, then you are going to be confronted with doing a whole lot of reading to get up to speed, to refresh your memory, because it's still locked in there. You didn't pull out the topic sentences. You didn't pull out the important point to remember. You didn't twice underline something to commit to memory. Now you've got to go back and literally redo what you've been doing for the last 8 weeks. So that's why note-taking as you go should be good and thorough. I know some people who actually rewrite their notes as a way of relearning it. What they took in class was kind of wild and at the moment, and then later on they rewrite their notes in an organized manner, and it puts it into their deep memory. It's not just what they wrote down at the time. They were forced to reconfigure it. So the notes, yeah. Other questions? Nothing else? Okay, well, thanks very much.